Hardworking, everyone. So you've heard from the Gen Ys and the Gen Zs, so I'm here representing Gen X. You either get this shirt or you don't. So the question is, are we the last hard-working generation? We all started early, Gen X, in our lives. We started working when we were teenagers, most of us. How many here are Gen Xers? I can't see everyone, but raise your hand. How many here of the Gen Xers had jobs before they were 20? Part-time job, whatever. Before 18? Before 16? All right. So my first job was a dishwasher when I was 15 years old. And 8-hour shift. So the first thing I did was cut up vegetables. You kind of do everything. The chefs wanted you to cut up vegetables, you cut up vegetables. Then I had to start up this industrial dishwashing machine. Conveyor belts, heated water, everything. And then the flood of dishes would start coming in for 4 hours straight. And we'd have to do all that stuff, take out the trash at the same time. And then the shift, it slows down, and then you start to mop the floors. Sweep, mop the floors, dirty stuff, take stuff to the dumpster. So by the end of the shift, after 8 hours, I walk out of there smelling like a dumpster. Right? A bleached dumpster. So that is how we grew up. Now that's just my first job, right? Within 6 months, I got another job as a busboy. So this is during the school year. So I would be, any time of the weekends or whatever, I would be either bussing tables or washing dishes, whatever the shift would allow and my schedule would allow. And within a year, I got a job as a waiter. At a Friendly's, it's a chain, a diner chain. And I was earning $2 an hour, plus tips. So tips range from 50 cents to $5 per table, right? When I got to university on a scholarship, Princeton, my work-study job was a dishwasher in the cafeteria, right? This is how we grew up. In the summer, during university, one summer I had 3 jobs. I was an intern at a defense contractor where I had to put on firefighting gear to go out and put out these simulated fires, real fires, but they were simulated because that was the job. And then evenings and weekends, I would be bussing tables or waiting tables. And on my feet, 7 days a week. It's just physically demanding. That is what it was like. I never got allowance from my parents. Some people do, some people don't. I had to earn whatever money I wanted to spend. And I started from the bottom. Most of us started from the bottom. We knew that we were supposed to start from the bottom. There was no idea of what we deserved. This, at that point in your time, with that level of education, that is what you are worth to society. Washing dishes and waiting tables. We knew that. Now, it wasn't as hard as the generation before us, but it was still physically demanding. And with that physical work comes that mental resilience. And you have to be mentally resilient, because this was the 70s and 80s. We had this thing called the Cold War. And we were at the peak of the Cold War. I don't think anyone, the gen before us, understood the Cold War. My kids don't understand the Cold War. We had Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, Maggie Thatcher, Falkland Wars, Panama. I mean, the list goes on in terms of the strife and stuff that was going on. There were enough nuclear ICBMs to destroy the world 100 times over. And I doubt any of the Gen Ys and Gen Zs understand what ICBM is. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear missiles that will destroy the world. So, when the world could end at any time, global warming was not a concern. And that's just the West, right? Here in Asia, Deng Xiaoping was the paramount leader of communist China. Communism China back then is nothing like the pseudo-capitalist communism that it is today. Japan back then was a global economic powerhouse, buying companies left and right in the West, and everyone was scared of Japan. Closer to home, here in Southeast Asia, we were all third world countries trying to claw out of poverty. They had racial issues, political instability, corruption, street gangs. That's just life. We had Suharto, we had Lee Kuan Yew, we had Mahathir, we had Thaksin, we had Marcos, right? All with their own visions and plans on how to benefit from the relative prosperity of the West. Now, obviously, I grew up in the 80s in the US, but I was born in Vietnam in 1971. So I do call Asia my home, and I've been in Singapore 25 years, right? My father died in 1973, 2 years before the Vietnam War ended. In 75, when South Vietnam fell to northern communist Vietnam, my family and I literally missed the boat with the US evacuation. We just didn't make it in time, the ship left. So we were stuck behind. In 77, we tried to escape. We became what is labeled as the boat people. And in 77, we didn't make it. I was put in jail for about 3 months. At 6 years old, they only kept me for 3 months. The adults had to stay longer. Tried again in 1979. This time, we made it. Went to Malaysia. So for a year, we stayed in a refugee camp off Pulau Tenga, off the coast of Mersing. And every day, it was rice and sardines. That's what the UNHCR provided to us. That was the ration. UNHCR is the UN refugee agency. And then I moved to America in 1980. Started learning English. 6 years later, I earned the right to wash dishes. Now, while this story seems fairly unique, there were actually almost 1 million Vietnamese who did that, who left Vietnam, and many who died trying. The rest of the Southeast Asian countries, which we're all trying to get on boats to, as I said, had their own internal issues, economic challenges. So the Gen Xers across Southeast Asia grew up having very little, grew up working very hard, without an idea of how they would eventually make a living, and without any kind of economic safety net. But we knew that if we wanted to succeed, we had to make that happen ourselves. This is why we've developed this physical and mental resiliency that makes us probably the last hardworking generation. Generation before us, the so-called baby boomers, they worked just as hard, if not harder, right? Different life, but are now retired or retiring. But us Gen Xers grew up at the time when computers and computing were becoming mass media. We saw punch cards, floppy drives, tape drives, right? Before all this flash memory and all that kind of stuff. We had the Commodore 64, Atari, Apple IIe, Trash DOS, before this thing called Windows 95 came on in 1995. We invented PowerPoint, we just choose not to use it. We grew up with the technology. We did IRC, bulletin boards, so I believe I was one of the first person in Asia to do online dating. Because we had a BB group, and we all chatted, and we all met up, and I started dating someone there. This is before Tinder. We gained this physical and mental resiliency because of the world we grew up in. And we became part of the always-on economy because we helped build it. So while generations before us are retiring to their hometowns, their beach resorts, their golf clubs, Gen Xers will never really retire. We have no plans of doing so. Sure, we may not be doing what we're currently doing, and we may work less than now. We may do what we enjoy, but we're never going to truly retire. It's not in how we grew up. So you may think Mahathir running for prime minister at the age of 92 is ridiculous. Wait till we get up there. You will continue to see us for many years to come. We don't know how to retire like the generation before us. We would be bored out of our minds. We may decide to travel to the ends of the earth with our backpacks. We may drive Grab, Ubers, GoJeks. We may decide to teach, lecture. We will remain in the workplace well into our 70s. So, to the Gen Ys, the Gen Zs, and the Generation Zero that follow them, I say, keep us engaged, work with us, give us rice and sardines, and we will help you save this planet before we ship ourselves off to Mars. Thank you.